So it says preparing to live stream meeting.
Okay, got it.
Oh, I need to click something at my end, I think. Yeah. Okay, and we are live.
Hi, Wendy. And
Hi.
hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am a trauma therapist and coach, and I am the author of the book, Cycle Breaker.
Nice.
And I'm super passionate about helping people to create a life that they totally love, no matter what they've been through, no matter the state of their life right now. I really believe in each person's capacity for tremendous growth. I think the human spirit is remarkable, but it can be kind of tricky to figure out how to connect into that ability to transcend. And so I want to talk today about what gets in the way of us really having a fulfilling life. And by doing so, I want to talk about the roots of childhood trauma.
Brilliant.
Okay, so let's start by talking about what it's like in infancy when babies are born into families that are really loving. Maybe a lot of the audience members can't relate to this possibility because people are tuning in because they've had a lot of hardship. But babies who receive love and attention and connection and attunement from their parents are going to grow up feeling very secure. They develop what is known as a positive internal working model. And the message they get is like, oh, I'm wonderful, I'm amazing, and other adults are wonderful and amazing, and the world is a safe place. And so they have the luxury of going through life feeling safe and secure, and good things are going to happen to them because they have a trajectory of confidence, of positivity, and the expectation that things will go well. Those of us who grew up with parents who were depressed, irritable, impatient, intolerant, and traumatized themselves could not give us, beginning in infancy, what we needed to feel safe and secure. So, for example, as babies, when we're crying or hungry or need attention, and our parents are misattuned and respond to us with anger or aggression or ignoring us altogether, or a combination of all of those things, then as babies, we believe it's our fault. That is where fundamentally we begin to lose our sense of confidence and our sense of self-worth. And the most important thing in childhood is safety. Babies are, and young children are totally helpless to be cared for by parents. And so if we have to choose staying true to who we really are or being safe, we're going to set ourselves aside and adapt who we are in order to be accepted and loved and cared for by our parents. And this is something that's so fundamentally important to understand, because the goal of a trauma recovery journey is essentially the path of returning back to our true authentic self, the part of us we had to abandon in order to be accepted and at least better cared for, or the hope of being better cared for by our parents if we didn't have needs or wants or desires. So what happens then as kids when we set aside who we are? We become very good people pleasers. I would guess everyone watching this can identify with that behavior pattern. When we are under threat as kids, and adults for that matter, but staying focused in childhood, we have our survival responses that we're automatically going to choose from when we feel scared. So a lot of us know about the fight and flight responses, that babies cannot flee and they cannot fight back. And so most often what happens is that as young children, we go into a freeze response in order to be safe if we feel threatened by the volatility or neglect in our families. Once we use the freeze response, which is automatic, we don't really choose it, then that becomes our predominant way of behaving throughout life when we feel threatened. The problem with that is that we often aren't in actual danger as adults, but we are operating from the perspective that we are, because we take that internal working model with us. It just grows right with us. It doesn't stay in childhood just because we're safe. And so we have that template that life is not safe. We can't count on other people. There's something wrong with me. And then we broadcast unconsciously, subconsciously, those beliefs out into the world. And so my favorite way of working with people is to examine what's happening in your adult life that you don't like. A lot of people feel like they have a dismissive or absent partner. A lot of people struggle with conflict with their children, or they feel like their boss overlooks them, or their coworkers go to lunch without them and leave them behind. All of the problems in our adult life are essentially shining a light to show us what's going on in our subconscious mind and our unhealed wounds. Our adult life and the challenges are like giving us the breadcrumbs that if we follow them back to the origins, then we can heal our wounds and those limiting beliefs and perspectives. And that is what is key in order to create a life that is vibrant and fulfilling and happy. So I'll pause there. Wendy, how does that sound to you?
Yeah, it's complicated, isn't it? How what we've experienced, the trauma it is that we've experienced, how it then navigates and guides us, and the complexity of that, the subtleness of not understanding why it is that we do what it is that we do, and why we're experiencing what it is that we're experiencing.
It's so tough because of our trauma, we have blinders and a lack of confidence in order to figure it out. And my story, after growing up with really severe childhood trauma, including physical, emotional, sexual, mental abuse, I was profoundly depressed in my teenage years and my young to middle adult life. And I really had no idea why. And so I couldn't really heal myself because I just felt fundamentally flawed and limited. I felt like I had just drawn the short end of the stick in terms of life circumstances. And that's why it's so important to have support, guide people with a different perspective to kind of help connect the dots. Trauma makes it very difficult for us to connect the dots on our own.
Yeah, pretty impossible. And connecting the dots is so important. It's something that I talk about in my first book about connecting the dots, trying to find out what you're unhappy with now, and thinking about actually where has that come from? What happened before? And what happened before that? And then what happened before that? And connecting the dots is really interesting. And I think when you're able to do that, something shifts, something changes. You release the energy, you seem to be able to release the energy of it.
I think what happens is it helps us connect to our own sense of personal power. Because if we feel like bad things just happen to us, then we have a sense of defeatism, helplessness, hopelessness, and that's really hard to create much of anything out of.
Yeah.
And so for me, when I realized, oh, I'm depressed and anxious and I have all this chronic pain and all this insecurity because of how I was treated growing up, then that gave me hope about my ability to do something about it versus feeling just at the mercy of life and the bad things that just happened.
Yeah, the mercy of that's really just struck a chord with me, the mercy of life. Because that is how it feels, isn't it? Until you move into a space where I think you start to become more conscious. What do you think the tipping point was for you?
I think for me, and a lot of the clients that I work with can identify this too, is being a mother has been the most important thing I've done personally, because I truly didn't want to repeat the patterns of how I was parented with my kids. But when we have unhealed trauma, we are going to have some similar behaviors and reactions that our parents had with us. And it was kind of horrified me sometimes, like what I would say or feel or think or do. And so for me, having children made it impossible for me to not figure out why I struggled so much and what to do to be the person that I really wanted to be. And what finally got things going in the right direction for me, I had so many years of various forms of chronic pain and illness, and tried for 10 years conventional medicine to try to figure out what was wrong. This was before a lot of really great books had been written, Bessel van der Kolk's book, and When the Body Says No by Gabor Mate. And so I had no idea why I had all this chronic physical discomfort. But one day over winter break, my kids were home, they were in elementary school, and I had the Oprah Winfrey show on, and there were women on the stage who had their vision boards, which was a new concept to me. And one of the women had a picture of Oprah on her vision board. And something just awakened within me, this hopefulness. And so over that winter break, I made this massive vision board. And it was like my prayer to the universe. I was like, okay, if I'm going to be here, then this is what I want. And interestingly enough, my health really, really tanked after that. So much so that I had to stop working. I think in a way, the universe realized I finally meant business and I was willing to do whatever it took. And so I had to get work off the table so I could really focus on my healing. And that's when the tables finally started to turn, in the favor of my healing instead of just staying stuck.
Something just popped into my head. My head is doing this all the time now. Something popped in and it popped straight back out again. That's really frustrating. It will come back. It will come back.
I'll just say then, that's why vision is, I think, one of the most important trauma tools is having a vision for what you want for your life. And what I tell people is, if you're struggling to know what you want, think about what you have experienced and are experiencing that you don't want, because that provides you the contrast to give you clarity. So if you're stuck in relationships that are unfulfilling, your partner's checked out or abusive, what does that tell you about what you do want in your relationship? If you're struggling financially and you're tired of living paycheck to paycheck and having kind of a poverty consciousness, then the contrast to that is prosperity and financial abundance and confidence with money.
Mm.
It's that vision that kind of pulls us along because, as you know, Wendy, the work of recovering from trauma is not easy. It's not always fun, though I think it's good to find ways to make it fun, which I think is one of the gifts I bring to the trauma work that I do with people. But having that vision will encourage us to do the hard things, because I tell my clients, your behaviors, your decisions are either moving you towards your vision or away from it. Everything you do, and we don't want to shame ourselves when we're moving away from our vision, because we're going to, but that vision is so important to inspire people to do what it takes to transcend their pain.
Thank you for rescuing me. I appreciate it. It has popped back in now.
Okay, good.
It's the hijacking the body can do when the mind doesn't have any conscious awareness of what's actually going on. And it's interesting because a lot of people get the pain in their body. I get it in my head. Everything always happens in my head. So my mental health stuff really plays out. But I've noticed that my body will hijack sometimes when I'm under stress and my brain thinks it can cope with it. My body will go, no, and completely take me out of the game, which I think is quite interesting.
Well, a large part of the work that I do is helping people become more connected to their bodies and develop a relationship with their body. My next book is called Body Solidarity.
Oh, nice.
And it's about the process of strengthening one's relationship with the body. Personally, I hated my body for so long because of just decades of grueling pain. And I knew that wasn't a good idea. And so I had to figure out myself, like, how to make peace with a body that does not feel good. Mm-hmm. And that does interrupt and hijack a life, causing a lot of limitations and deafness. And so what I teach people about their bodies is that our bodies are always guiding us back to our authentic true self. And that if we can learn to communicate with our bodies to understand what the message is behind the symptom, then that is a way of reconnecting us to our authenticity and addressing things that we need to address. I was sharing with you before we started the interview that I had been making so much progress with healing my body. I had gotten a lot stronger, which gave me more freedom. And so I was traveling and doing some things. And my psyche at one point was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Too much, too fast, too soon. And so it produced more body symptoms as a way to keep me more limited, because my primary survival strategy from childhood was don't move. Don't move, don't breathe, just stay still. So I've had a lot of problems with my diaphragm, which is a really important part of our breathing process, because of being stuck in a freeze response for so long. And so it can be really frustrating when body symptoms come up. But if we can learn to interpret our symptoms as the wisdom of our body leading us to a wound that needs healed, to a limiting belief that needs cleared, and to be more loving and patient and gentle with our own bodies, that is a very valuable and necessary step on our growth journey.
That's really interesting. As you were saying that, I was thinking I got triggered by something the other day. I don't often get triggered anymore. I got triggered by something the other day and I just needed to sleep. Couldn't stay awake. And that comes back to a trauma I had when I was a kid. So I was drugged when I was little to keep me quiet. And I think when I get really, when something triggers me, I just want to go to sleep. That's my protection thing. I just need to sleep. And it's a real heavy, cannot stay awake sleep. It's interesting.
It's shocking how powerful these connections are. What fires together wires together. And so in your case, the need to be quiet and being drugged, wired together. And we can't just with our consciousness overcome those deeply ingrained patterns because they're survival based. In other words, we feel like we could die if we don't do whatever it is the body has the impulse to do. And so for me, just even taking short walks for the longest time was very difficult because my body and my mind were convinced that if I moved, I could die. And so even movement like walks would be threatening. It was giving the message, oh, you're in danger, you could die. And so much of the healing journey is about helping those younger parts of us to grow up to see that we're adults now, like competent, capable, autonomous adults who can create our own sense of safety. And it takes a while, especially those of us with really extreme trauma, to address all of those inner child parts that still feel like the past is happening.
I love the inner child work. I think it's a bit intense. It takes it's taken me a long time to trust myself to connect with my inner child and to mother from my higher self, my inner child, which has been absolutely fascinating. I have this belief that if I don't know what you think of this, but if the inner child is stuck with some trauma, it's almost like everything has to catch up together. So the older version of you has to catch up with the traumatized child so they feel safe so you can move forward. My theory.
I think, in the beginning when I do inner child work with people, it's tricky because the adult self can have a hard time being nurturing and loving to the inner child. And so what I do in those cases is invite in our older, wiser self, our higher self, divine mother, whoever the client feels a connection with. And so I just imagine like our higher self nurturing and loving the adult part of us, and then the adult part of us can give love and connection to the inner child. It requires a lot of creativity doing the inner child work, which I think is really fascinating. And it's just shockingly helpful.
Yeah, I remember reading a book years ago about the inner child. And I think even though I didn't get it at the time, later on I got it. I don't know, 20 years later or something, I got it. At the time I couldn't get it. It was obviously just too raw. So it's nice to hear that you do inner work child with people, because it's so powerful. It's incredibly powerful.
My most skeptical clients, out of desperation, would give it a try and be shocked and surprised at how much better they felt in a really short amount of time.
Yeah.
It's tricky because it's really subtle work. And
Yeah.
so for people who don't have a lot of confidence can struggle initially to realize that they actually are connecting with a younger version of themselves. And we have to become the parent to ourselves that we always wanted.
Yeah.
No one else can give that to
Um,
us. No one else can talk to inner Mindy the way I can and heal
yeah.
her. And, the same for you and everyone else. So it's about building up our adult self to have the capacity to give that loving connection to the inner child is super important.
Yeah. Oh, something popped in. What was going on in my head? Something popped in and then popped out again. Brain. It's an age thing. It's definitely an age thing. As I get older, it does it more frequently. Actually, I shouldn't talk to myself like that, should I? So I just experience more of it, which I don't obviously want. So your new book sounds absolutely fascinating, and
Thank you. Yeah, I'm
when it
getting ready
comes
to
out,
Mhm.
please let me know, because it's one thing I've always struggled with is the connection to the body. So I mainly have a friend I joke with, but I mainly live in my head. My body sort of doesn't exist. Everything happens in my head, and I find it very hard to connect the brain and the body together. So I think that's something I definitely need to explore. And if it's happening for me, it's going to be happening for tons of other people as well. as well.
Yes, I will say what I discovered, Wendy, is using the power of our own voice to heal ourselves. I teach a class called Body Solidarity, where I take groups of people through this process of learning how to connect with and love their bodies. And as part of that, I made them a body love meditation, where I spoke and talked about sort of starting at the top of the head and giving love to the body parts and moving all the way down. And I realized how profoundly healing it was for me to listen to my own voice. I mean, I listen to YouTube meditations all the time, but there was something that I got from my own voice that I didn't get from the other meditations I was listening to. And so if any viewers want to go to my website and get a copy of that body love meditation, it can be a way to bridge your own relationship with your body by starting with mine. And then I invite everyone to make their own.
Oh, nice. Do share the link with me and I'll put it below the video so people can get access to it.
Okay, for sure. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, that would be great. So what's something that someone could do now to help them to connect?
So one very simple tool is self-compassion. It may not be easy to give oneself compassion, but I want to just give you a really simple strategy. And so for anyone watching right now, I invite you just to put your hands on your heart and think about something difficult that you're going through. It could be body pain that you're experiencing. It could be an unexpected bill that you got in the mail, or a fight that you had with your child or your pet or your partner. And just say to yourself, I am so sorry that you fill in the blank. And then you could go even deeper and say, I'm so sorry that you had such a hard childhood. I'm so sorry that you did not get your needs met as a child. I'm so sorry that life is so hard right now. I'm so sorry that you don't feel confident in yourself. I'm so sorry that you feel sad. I'm so sorry that you feel angry. And I just welcome everyone to notice how you feel, just that 2 minutes or even less that we spent just with self-compassion. And every sentence just starts with, I'm so sorry. We just make it really simple. And then you just add whatever struggle you're going through, what you've been through. And it's a really simple way to bring really deep healing to yourself.
I love that, because again, you're connecting the dots, aren't you? You're connecting the dots and you're getting under. Every time you say I'm sorry, you're getting under a layer deeper, until you can't go any deeper. That's really powerful.
It really, truly is very powerful. Another tool that I work with people on, I enjoy doing this in a group setting. I have everyone think about what freedom means to you. If you felt truly free in your life without limitation, what would that be like? Again, this helps tap into vision. And so if you struggle with body pain or body rejection for any reason, you can say, I'm free to do what I want to do, to travel, to hike, to go out to dinner with friends. I'm free financially to buy what I want to buy, to live where I want to live. And so really cultivating that sense of freedom and knowing specifically what that looks like. And then the exercise is, imagining that you're here and that freedom is here. What lies between you and freedom are fears, right down the middle. And those fears are all the things that are precisely meant for us to face, to move from here to here. I like to reframe what fear is. Certainly there are fears where our alert system is saying that actually is dangerous and we need to avoid that. But there are fears that we know are scary things that we need to do that are actually for our highest good to face. Because most of the time, things that we're scared of are an illusion, meaning it's only sort of the leading up to it that is scary. Doing it can still be scary, but once we get on the other side of it, there's so much freedom. And that is one thing that really helps us develop a greater sense of confidence in ourselves, is doing the hard, scary things, because we're proving to ourselves how capable we are. And so we're changing that old narrative that I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm weak. And so I'm always encouraging my clients to do the scary things. We'll start with smaller, scary things initially. We don't want to climb a mountain when we're totally out of shape, right?
Yeah, don't let the body freak out too much. Yeah.
But climbing those small hills builds confidence.
Absolutely.
And gives us courage for the bigger hills.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you ever have someone who says that they can't connect with the idea of freedom? That there's just no meaning, but they just can't feel it, see it, express it, step into it?
Yes, I think it can be really hard for people who are stuck in a sense of helplessness, because we have to keep ourselves really small growing up when there's trauma. We have to give up our hopes and dreams because it's just too painful to want things that are completely out of reach. And so we create a sense of smallness for survival purposes, which prevents us from being able to imagine and see the possibility of freedom and living a vibrant and full life. So validate that's absolutely a normal challenge for someone with a lot of trauma. And that's when I bring in the contrast piece. Focusing on what you don't want can help you get clarity on what you do want. And the other thing I do, Wendy, is I encourage people to read memoirs and watch documentaries and real life movies based on experiences of people who have overcome a lot of hardship, because we need to expose our brain to the fact that people all the time go through very, very difficult things and come out on the other side.
Yeah.
And so the more we show our brain that, the more it gives us that idea of possibility that it could happen to us, which takes us to the title of my talk, Why Not You?
Yeah, nice. It gives you permission, doesn't it? I think that's the other thing that just came to mind.
Yes.
It gives you permission to be something else, to experience something else.
One of the things that holds people back, often it's unconscious, is the sense of loyalty to a family. So those of us on a trauma recovery journey are often the black sheep of the family, the scapegoats who have escaped patterns of living that are really dark and heavy and negative and abusive and traumatic. And on some level, some child part of us can feel guilty that we got away, or that we were able to achieve some level of freedom that other people in our family have not or will not ever. And so we have to kind of look and explore, like, what are the limiting beliefs we're holding that are holding us back from believing that we are capable of a much more vibrant life.
I'm in as you're talking, I'm in the freedom bit. I'm like, why can I not connect to freedom? It's annoying me now.
Well,
really
this is a
interesting.
great example of like what shows up in our everyday life is always information about where we have blockages that need our attention.
Yeah. I think what's coming up, what's interesting is that trauma and survival are so deep, are just so intertwined with one another, is that it's the realization of, I'm going to say something now, it's going to come out the wrong way, but it's almost like that sense of that you think you've come so far, but then you think of, then something else slips in and you're like, oh.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Maybe not, but yes, but no.
No, I think anyone watching this would definitely relate to that. And so what I tell people is that our growth journey is like this sort of up and down as we're always sort of moving forward. And so when we're in this down part, it can feel like a setback or like, gosh, maybe I'm not as far along as I thought I was, but it's just sort of a dip that's helping us to catapult ourselves forward. But it can be disappointing how many layers are involved in trauma recovery.
Oh, so many.
So many.
So many.
There's
so many. There's so many. And I feel like there's just not enough. There's not enough conversations. There's not enough knowledge or insight and wisdom being passed down. It still feels like it's a taboo to talk about this sort of stuff. And it shouldn't be, because the statistics are shocking.
I think one of the other challenges related to this is authenticity. And that's one of the things, Wendy, I really admire about you, is how authentic you are. Because, we lose our authenticity, as I talked about earlier, where we develop people pleasing and self-sacrifice and image, and we want people to see us a certain way so that we can feel safe and adored and liked and safe. And so it's the lack of authenticity that also makes it hard for other people on a healing journey to have validation about how incredibly difficult it is. So it's the process of us who are teachers, speakers, authors, to share our stories in a way that other people can relate to both the pain that we have been through and still go through, but also to see how much more is possible.
Yeah. The possibility, what's the word? Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about it all the time. Possibility and opportunity, I think he says. Possibility and opportunity. You always want to keep the door open to possibility and opportunity. And
one of the things that I have found from one of my mentors taught me the what if statement. A lot of teachers will talk about the importance of affirmations. I think it's very difficult to find affirmations that actually work because our subconscious mind has to be willing to receive them. And a wounded child, inner child who hears, I'm wonderful, I'm amazing, I'm brave, is going to say, and that's when the sabotage kind of comes in. Resistance, yes. Yeah. And so one of my mentors taught me about using what if statements. What if life is easier? What if I can let myself receive?
Nice.
And that what if makes our brain less resistant.
Yeah.
And saying the what if statements over and over, that actually is a very good way to transform limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
It's slow, it's subtle, and it requires persistence on our part.
Yeah, I really like that. Resistance is a real problem, I think. When we do these things, we create so much resistance, it's not going to be possible, but it's because no one teaches about not creating resistance.
Resistance comes from fear.
Yeah.
And so the more we can do to comfort our inner child and give compassion to ourselves and get ourselves into a relaxed state, those are my best tips for how to soften resistance.
Yeah.
And I think the journey is about finding things that work for each person that are simple and repeatable, because it takes persistence moving in the direction of our desires. And when we have a history of helplessness and hopelessness and powerlessness, persistence can be challenging. But one day, I also believe that all of our qualities that got us through a difficult childhood help us heal from what we've been through.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And I love that actually everyone I've spoken to this week has a level of curiosity, conscious, open to express the challenges it is that they have been through, are still facing, and still on their own healing journey. It's been quite incredible to listen to everybody's stories and their own unique way of how they've dealt with and help their clients now to deal with the traumas it is that they've experienced.
I love that too. And I love how we each have our own path that involves different kinds of healing work, different tools. And that's why I always want everyone to start with vision, because what's worked for me might be very different that works for someone else, or slightly different. But if we stay focused on aligning with our vision of what we want, then the right tools, the right healers, the right books come upon our path when we focused on what we do desire.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Final thoughts?
I just want to reiterate how much possibility there is for everyone. And even if someone is watching this right now and they're like, oh, well, that works for them, but not me. I want to tell you, I've been my toughest client. I had profound depression, profound body pain. None of my relationships were how I wanted them to be. I was in so much darkness for so long. And I like to share that with people because I want to say, I know this sounds like colloquial and cheesy, but if I can do it, you can do it. And you must begin first by deciding what you want for your life. And so watching the documentaries, reading memoirs of people who've gone through hard things, exposing yourself to what has worked for other people can give you the ideas and to get the momentum going. And that sometimes be the most difficult part, is getting the momentum.
Yeah.
You need to transcend what you're going through. And I do offer various kinds of groups that I work with, because I think community is extremely important for support, for encouragement, for accountability, for, seeing the successes that other people have. I teach a body solidarity group for people who are wanting to make peace with their bodies because of their weight or chronic pain or illness, or for whatever reason they reject their bodies. That's been a really positive group. I teach a manifesting class that is based on understanding trauma recovery and applying that to what you want to manifest in your life. And I lead a group called Soul Circle, which is for people who are really deep in their healing journey. And we talk about how to truly face our challenges with courage and to use all of our triggers as fuel for growth. Wow. So I offer a little bit of something for everyone, no matter where they are on their journey, because community and support combined with wisdom is extremely valuable, I think.
And I think a lot of this stuff we tend to do in isolation. Well, I'll talk for myself. I talk for myself, not for everybody. But a lot of the stuff I've done has been in isolation. It hasn't been in groups, but I can definitely see the benefit of being in a group, because you get out of your head and you can see how other people see you and experience you.
Yes. And I will have people pause in our groups and just look around to see the faces on everyone in the room, so they can take in that warmth and that love and that connection. And it provides a corrective experience that is in complete contrast to what they experienced growing up.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's really, really powerful. That's really special. Really special.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and I could imagine it's quite tough. I'm sitting here thinking, oh, that sounds really tough, that does.
I will say that the people that join my groups, Wendy, are people who are really fun to be around.
Yeah.
And it's the combination of the sense of humor and playfulness that I bring and the clients that I work with, that somehow that combination makes trauma recovery more lighthearted, more fun. And I think we all look forward to our group meetings because it's just tremendous growth and laughter at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. I can relate to the laughter part. You have to have a bit of a sense of a dark sense of humor.
For sure. For sure. Yes.
Where can people find you, get hold of you, find out more about you?
Well, my website is mindikessler.com. It's MINDIKESSLER.com. And you can find my book on Amazon or on my website. We'll link you there. And I provide one-on-one coaching. I have several online courses, including one to help people heal their inner child. One is called Alchemize Your Life, which is a more in-depth program based on the content from my Cycle Breaker book. And I have a body solidarity course that can either be done in a live class with me, or people can go through the modules, watch the videos, use the worksheets. So there are a variety of ways to access the information that I very passionately share to help people on their growth journey.
And that's nice because it's accessible all around the world, which is lovely.
Yes. Yes. And I also have a private Facebook group if anyone wants to join.
Cool.
It's called Cycle Breakers.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of lovely people in there, and I love to have conversations and post. I offer free master classes
Cool.
from time to time. So I just love to connect with people truly from all over.
Please add me. I didn't know you had a group. Yeah,
Okay, I will.
Yeah,
for sure. For sure.
That'd be great. So just before we close, just tell me a little bit about the current book that you've got out.
So Cycle Breaker is, show a picture again.
Nice.
It tells the story of my own experience of trauma growing up and going into my adult life, unaware of what happened to me, feeling like I was just fundamentally flawed. And I talk about why people hurt their children and how to to come to terms with that. And I have 16 pillars of trauma recovery in the book as well, where I talk about the themes that are really valuable in terms of healing from trauma, things like inner child healing, learning how to master your thoughts, learning how to master your emotions, learning how to understand your story and work through it. And I touch on forgiveness and self-love. And I also talk about a lot of the common consequences of childhood trauma, because Wendy, a lot of people don't realize they experienced trauma in childhood. And so I talk about things like low self-esteem and difficulty setting boundaries, being in relationships that aren't healthy, anxiety and depression and self-harm and addiction. I look at all of these problematic patterns of emotions and behaviors, and I talk about how they are directly the result of childhood trauma. And so I think a lot of people can read the book and see themselves in a way that they didn't before, because a lot of people are very hard on themselves, like, oh, I'm just a perfectionist, or I have a hard time setting boundaries, or I have codependent. And there's a lot of negativity and self-criticism and judgment when people see themselves in that way. But I wanted to write the book so that people could see, both people who haven't been traumatized can understand traumatized people in a different way, but also those of us who have been through it. I wanted people to be able to see their struggles and hold themselves with compassion instead of judgment. Because I talk about how we only think in these ways, feel the ways that we do, behave the way that we do because we're in pain. We have unresolved pain. Mm. And then I try to make it as clear as possible how to align with the process of healing.
Powerful. Sounds really powerful.
Thank you.
I think it's great to be able to see symptoms. I don't know if it's symptoms. I don't know if it's the right word. It's great that you explain the effects of trauma. You know, what some of the experiences, the feelings, the emotions, the self-blame, you know, what the patterns are, because there is even though we have our own unique experiences, there is a whole list of things that we all have of things in common as a consequence.
For sure.
Yeah.
And it's just time to stop condemning people for those kinds of behaviors or problems, and stop condemning ourselves, and just understand that we are only manifesting emotionally and behaviorally unresolved pain based on fear and an inability to connect to our authenticity. They're all survival strategies to navigate life after betrayal, abandonment, rejection, and just immense pain.
Okay, so final thoughts. Final thoughts.
I just want to reinforce what I said at the beginning, is that there's a pathway for everyone to heal, truly. I truly believe that we are all capable of immense growth. There's a term called post-traumatic growth. And essentially what that means is that our life can become even more vibrant, wonderful, and elevated the harder it's been. And that's the hope I give to the clients that come to see me. Like, the shittier your life has been, the greater it can be, truly.
And on that note, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And it's lovely to speak to you again. It's been too long.
Thank you, Wendy. It's a true pleasure. And I just wish everyone listening the best in their recovery journey.
Take care.
You too. Bye, Wendy.